What's up, everybody? Today, I'm honored to have my longtime friend and creative comrade, Bill Jeffery, in the virtual studio. Bill and I have been friends for over 20 years, and after hearing him play guitar with some mutual friends in the dorms, I invited him to lunch at a Taco Bell, naturally, and asked him if he would really want to make a go at this starting a band thing. Bill's answer was simple: yes. So in college, we started a Christian worship band and ended up traveling around the US for the better part of a decade, writing and leading songs for various Christian events and camps. That seems like a long time ago now, and as life has progressed, as it does, we parted ways to pursue other meaningful things that life is made up of, like marriage, families, and paying the bills. Thankfully, we've been able to maintain a special friendship and trust that can somewhat be unique to bandmates, forged in the crucible of dozens and dozens of weekend warrior van travels, cheap hotels, fast food, and better yet, host homes. Several years ago, Bill went through a radical lifestyle change. Through trial and experimentation, he lost 100 pounds and has also become a formidable road and gravel cyclist. He has developed a social media profile called Plant Strong Cycling, where he covers his journey with his plant-based diet, as well as his cycling adventures, also sprinkled in his love of guitar and moments from his family life. Last year, Bill participated in Unbound, a world premiere 200 miles gravel cycling race. And this year he rode in Unbound again, only this time he rode in the XL class, riding 300 miles. Both adventures have taught and are teaching him radical realities about life and meaning. In some ways, Bill is a big reason I was able to start doing this podcast. As a year ago, we shot a pilot podcast episode together for a previous idea that I had been kicking around that I ended up putting on hold. However, I have released that episode on my members-only section of this channel. Bill taught me how to use a camera, and he also is a great photographer and digital media creator. Bill's day job is a creative and communications director at our shared alma mater, and he is also the faculty liaison and director for the student worship and folk band initiatives. He has also begun his own podcast, Plant Strong Cycling Podcast, found wherever you find podcasts. I also encourage you to hop on over and check out his YouTube channel by the same name. Today, we're going to get into all of this as we practice some conversation craft here on Yours Truly. I know you're going to enjoy getting to know Bill, as he has an impeccable sense of humor. So without any further delay, I give you Bill Jeffery, Plant Strong Cycling. Hi, this is Christian Baxter, and you're listening to Yours Truly, a place we go to think out loud. And here we are.
Hey, man, I want to listen to that introduction every morning when I first wake up. That would be really motivating for me. So thank you. It's very kind of you to say all that.
Well, it's true. And it should be available in a week or two.
Nice.
So, yeah, man. Well, for that listening pleasure, welcome to the Yours Truly podcast.
Hey, glad to be here, man. Congratulations on all the crazy success you've had with this too. This is like, threefold, tenfold better than mine already, and so I'm just a little bit jealous. So I'm only here to pick your brain and steal your secrets. So,
well, the secret is, I think you've got it, is community, like a real community.
Yeah. And
I've seen you're tapping into that, connecting to that, and that's what happened here. I didn't even know about it. And like, I was watching this guy, Paul Vanderglay, who I had watched like in 2017. And he opened up a live stream, and like people just came up like this on a random Friday, like back in January. And I was like, what is going on? There are people that are just like here hanging out, talking about Jordan Peterson and whatever else, meaning, faith. And it just kind of set something inside of me. And I made a video, and like that, it did like 500 views overnight. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
And there were people that were like paying attention to like something very specific. So, and I just kind of rolled with it. But anyways.
Oh, I love it, man.
That's the secret. Yeah. So I guess I've asked this question on here some, but how do you think we got to this conversation from your perspective? How would you paint that picture?
Well, I think you nailed it when you said Taco Bell. I mean, now I want Taco Bell, and that, yeah. I mean, when you rewind back to I think it was my junior year of high school and in maybe the beginning of my senior year, the fact that we just happened to meet randomly and I knew of you before that. Just fast forward, we both had mutual need for each other. I played electric guitar, you sang, and the ingredients were there for a lifelong friendship.
True. Yeah. So we've been hanging out on and off ever since. Like our in-laws live like right across the
They
street from
do.
each.
Yeah, which is a shame because anytime I'm there or you're at your place, it's hard to,
Yeah.
break
Doing the,
away and go see anybody and do anything. But
doing the
uh,
family thing.
yeah, gotta be a
So
family man.
yeah, well, yeah, these days. Yeah. So, I think, like I said, we shot this little pilot podcast thing about a year ago and I kind of tabled it, but part of it is out on your channel.
Yep,
A section of
doing
it.
really well, in my
Oh, cool.
opinion. Yeah.
Good. And but to that, we covered a ton of stuff. But as far
Mm-hmm.
as for like you, and letting people know about like the journey that you've been on, to get to kind of the meat of this conversation about your recent race on Unbound, this year, kind of like tell the story of how Bill got into cycling, how Bill, kind of had a big change.
Yeah. So like, go back 4 years. Is that kind of what you were thinking?
Yeah, go
Yeah.
for it.
Um, I weighed like 250, probably 280 at my highest, all through like the 2010s, and then um, watched a documentary called The Game Changers, and said if I cut out meat and dairy from my diet, I'll lose a bunch of weight. And 3 months later, I lost 50 pounds. That's the beginning of 2020. Then I jumped on the bicycle, enjoyed being outside. I felt like a kid again,
Mhm.
and yeah, the ever since then, I've just continually ridden more, whether it be quantity of time or quality of time, getting faster, building community. But I really do ride alone still. Like I started riding during the pandemic, and you pretty much had to ride alone. And obviously, I was so slow that nobody would want to ride with me back then. But yeah, just it's crazy. I've worked my butt off for the past 4 years to become a cyclist. And at the beginning, your gains are insane. Like you lose
Mhm.
weight quickly, you get faster quickly, and then where I'm at now, it's like you have to work your butt off to get just a little bit better. And at the end of the day, when you line me up with like 100 other cyclists, I'm still crap. So it's really discouraging when you get around really good cyclists. But
And yeah, it is about like who you compare yourself to, but
yeah,
some of that, can be healthy, some of it not sometimes. But that makes me think about, and I'll go ahead and bring our patron saints of Hillsong United into that conversation where, comparing yourself to that gives you like it gives you something to compare yourself to. And we used to, I think, try to like, oh, we want to be like these guys. We want to compare ourselves. And our standard is not just like who is across town, but our standard is like trying to, people that are at the top of that level. That's what that reminds me of.
yes, and I think when you do that, you actually discover yourself eventually. You
Mm,
might spend years thinking like you're just a copycat or impersonating somebody, but eventually I think you do find your own voice in your own niche of where you're at, and people know you for, that's
mm.
Christian Baxter. That's not whoever podcast guy you're looking up
Hillsong,
to right now, or
Hillsong
Hillsong.
cover
Yeah,
band,
yeah,
Christian Baxter, Hillsong cover band.
yep.
Yeah, that I think even in this journey that I've been on the last almost 6 months, there's been a big piece of that. Obviously, and I've talked about healing on here a whole lot, my personal life, but being able to at the same time like re-find a part of yourself, but also discovering your own voice. I feel like I'm getting closer and closer to that, being like okay with being me,
Mm-hmm.
continually. And so yeah, dude, I agree with that. So I had on here like, and you've been very stoic in the beginning of this conversation, but
I'll bring it down. Go ahead.
how'd you like you in my mind, you went from like Chris Farley to Lance Armstrong, like, and that was uh
I'm still fat on the inside, just so everybody knows, and I always will be. Yeah,
see, there it is.
yeah.
Yeah. So to that point, what has it been teaching you about you? Like to that, as you were kind of alluding to, you said that kind of in a general sense, but what about you, like personally?
Can you repeat the question?
Well,
I
just,
got
you
I
said
got
that,
lost in there
you
thinking
said
like
that,
Lance Armstrong.
well, you said that doing things like this alone, or like having people that you're like comparing yourself to or something like that, in that
Uh-huh.
journey of becoming, you find yourself like, what, what have you found out about yourself in that process?
Yeah, okay. I will first off, I suck as a cyclist,
Mm,
especially when you look at like the landscape of other cyclists. I mean, I'm far from the best even in Northeast Arkansas.
mm,
But I work my butt off. You think by the amount of time I spend in it, I should be one of the best ones, but I still feel like garbage. And but being okay with that. Like this year, so last year I wanted to do the 200 miles, that race, and it seemed impossible. And then I get there, found out, I'd over prepared for it. I finished in the top 40%, which is, again, just insane for me. Like, that's absolutely wild that I even finished, but to finish that well for me was incredible. And then I got into this year and thought, I'm going to do it again. I'm just going to do a little bit faster and be better. And then I had some buddies who were signing up for it, and I thought, the idea of racing them sounds like fun. But it sounds like more fun? Doing something impossible again.
mm.
So, so in March, that's when I found out, okay, it's not the race and the performance and the ability to outperform people in my area, but it's about outperforming myself and discovering new things about myself. And that actually might just be an addiction. I don't really know. Don't really want to know. But that's where I'm at in discovering a little bit of, I guess, just figuring out who I am as a cyclist. I want to have fun. So I want to do something impossible. And this year I did a different training approach, and it's called polarized training. It's where you work your butt off really hard for 1 or 2 days a week, and then you just chill. And that's allowed me more time to ride with friends this year instead of last year. I was just riding by myself on the trainer indoors, trying to hit numbers all the time. So yeah, I guess who I am now is somebody who wants to do something impossible and somebody who wants to be more involved with other friendships. And, old Bill would not have wanted to ride 20 miles to a gas station, eat a hot dog, and then ridden home. Now, man, I wish somebody would invite me to do that. That sounds like fun.
Would you eat a hot dog?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. But no, not because of the vegan thing. Just we're on a training ride. It's part of part of the culture.
Oh, so like, yeah, as more of like a participation.
Yep.
So you kind of put that in a different compartment than like maybe your personal diet or something like.
Yeah. So I ate for the past 2 weeks leading up to the race. So strict, like insane. I think I lost 8 pounds leading into it. But I was eating a ton. I was eating a lot of carbs. I was drinking a lot of like water and hydration stuff, not alcohol. But
Drinking a lot.
yeah. And then I get to the race, and every gas station we stopped at, I was just like, what sounds good? That's what I want. And what I actually crave now is potato chips with mustard on them.
Wow.
Weird, right? That vinegar in them really breaks up the flavor of all the sports drinks so well that I've developed a new little addiction. But yeah, a hot dog with mustard sounds awesome too.
Yeah, because for a while, because I mean you're plant strong, so like a big part of your lifestyle change was a plant-based like diet for the most part.
Oh
So,
yeah.
yeah, you went hard on plant only. So it sounds like in certain situations, like you will kind of give on that now for like a relational
Yeah.
component.
Yep. 100%.
And so you just talked about like this idea of like having your passion or the thing that like pushes you hard, of something towards excellence, something towards like impossibility. And then at the same time, if you're myopic in that and you don't make it like a category or a value space in this pursuit or this hierarchy of like how you're structuring your life, then it won't happen. And so it sounds like you've added that value in somewhere on your stack of values. Is that correct?
That's tracking. Yeah. Yeah.
So and then so that had to do with like getting into the race this year instead of like just wanting like you. I don't know how did you incorporate that recently?
Yeah, the idea of doing something impossible and pushing yourself, and it's the 1 week where I could ride as much as I wanted to. Because when Taylor and Eleanor said they were not going to go with me, I just thought, well, I'm going to be there for 4 days anyways. I might as well uh, ride as much as I possibly can. And the XL provided that opportunity. As far as like the identity of it goes, it did hit into okay, I want to ride a bunch of miles. I want to have a lot of fun, and I want to hang out with people. And I want the same Unbound experience last year combined with a ton of miles and something impossible, so that when I cross the finish line, I feel like I'm somebody new again. I wanted to relive that dopamine hit. That was a massive dump last year.
Yeah.
So that's
So
what I wanted.
did it happen?
No, not even close. You said I did 300 this year. I did ride 298.5 of the course. But the actual course distance was 354 miles. So I had to call it quits with about 56 miles left.
Why?
Oh, wow. Okay, so this is going to be part of my video, but I'll go ahead and hopefully the video will be out before this comes out. So,
just go all out on it because it's not.
I
mean,
will.
the chance for the cross pollination is probably kind of low, but
okay. Okay, here we go. You get to this. You spend all of Friday by yourself because you're getting ready. You're trying to rest. I'm watching Ted Lasso, getting everything dialed in on my bike, trying to lay down. I slept really well the night before. You're doing all those things. All my buddies were getting to do group rides with fun friends and getting to go to the expo and meeting all the cycling heroes, having all this fun. And I'm like by myself getting ready.
You did that last year though, didn't you?
The expo?
Yeah, you did all that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got all the community in the world last year. So this year I spent Friday by myself, get to the race at 2 p.m., and it starts at 3 p.m., but I had to get a few things like finalized on my bike, get there at 3, and I take off, and the send-off is insane. There's so many people all to your right and left. Like, I mean, there's probably over 2,000 people there to send you off, and it lasts forever. They close off downtown. It's just a beautiful send off. And then miles 1 through 80, I'm carrying this 20 to 25 pound backpack on my back full of water, all kinds of tools, food, everything. My bike has an extra 10 pounds on it full of stuff, and I'm trying to keep up with guys who are like going bare minimal, and it's really starting to hurt my leg just trying to keep up with them. But I thought I want to get as many miles ahead and done while it's still daylight because I'm going to have to ride all night, no sleeping. Well, mile 80 gets there and my right leg is killing me. Mile 90, they get to the top of a hill. I'm halfway up and I'm just like, hey guys, I'm going to have to quit here. My right leg's cramping. I'm done. Like I can't get through this. So I felt really bad for myself for about 10 seconds. And I said, I'm just going to, ride back to the gas station and be done. But instead, I said, in the Game Changers, the guy who was trying to beat the record for the Appalachian Trail, he got injured early on. And he had said he had to recover through it. And I thought, I wonder if I can recover through this. So, because if I were to go home and lay down, it would recover tomorrow. It'd be fine. So why not try to ride in such a way that it can recover? So I rode like 4 miles an hour for the next 4 hours. And it was all through the night. First time I've ever ridden in the night, like through the night by myself, or at all. Just ridden through the night at all. And I was all alone. I had my flashlights on, and there was some really sketchy parts. And I said, I'm just going to ride until the sun rises, and that way I can say, well, I did something cool. I rode until the sun came up, and my legs started feeling just enough better at that point. When the sun did rise, it was like kind of that reborn on the bicycle. And we got to the most beautiful section of the course. And I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to keep riding. And then my computer lost navigation, but it was the most beautiful scenery in the world. So I didn't even feel the hills. I was just climbing as if, I were invincible again. Mindful a little bit of my right leg, but so at this point, in the race, I'm carrying 20 to 25 pounds extra in my backpack, in my bag, so my back's hurting. I've ridden over 100 miles at this point. My right leg is cramped up, and it's getting better, but not enough to say it is better. And I've lost navigation, so I'm having to stop constantly, pull my phone out and be like, okay, where's the turn? Okay, it's right here. Oh crap, I overshot it. I have to go back. And then I'm like, okay, well now I don't know how many miles I've done. So did I do 10 unknown? Did I do 20 before the computer started like working again? Like I lost count of where I was. And then so I'm tired, I'm hurting, I'm delirious, and then it gets hot. And I've been alone for a long, long time. And then I see a little bit of people here and there, but I don't really want to ride with anybody. And that's when the emotional pain of the loneliness kicked in, and I just wanted to go home. So when I got to mile 300, and I was cooking those last 20 miles, like trying to get there because I had a 3 a.m. cutoff, and when I did the math at mile 50, I was like, okay, I have to go 14 miles per hour for the next 4 hours to beat the cutoff, and it'll be 30 more miles before I see anybody else, like, and could draft off them. I'm going to be going into a headwind, and just thought, you know what, as much as I have to finish this race, I can't be lonely anymore. I just can't do it. So yeah, I called it quits then, and there was a really kind gentleman who had his Jeep there at that water station, and he drove me back to Emporia, and I chatted with him the entire time because I missed people. So that's kind of the multiple factors that led into it. And the slower I would ride, the more my body would hurt. The faster I would ride, the more I'm like, okay, I can do this. But there was like a 5-mile section of creek crossings and climbs where I'm going as hard as I can, and I'm barely going 7 miles per hour. And that was discouraging. And I was like, I can't. If there's like 2 or 3 more of these, like Anyway, and my phone was about to die. It was at 20%. All my recharging stuff was dead. And I thought, okay, if I wreck out here too, I'm in trouble. Like, I won't have phone access. I might lose my lights. I don't really know how the tracker thing on me worked. That was like doing the live tracking. There's probably like an SOS button, but anyways, there were a lot of factors of I want to be with people and I want to be home. The only way I can guarantee to get home is if I quit right now.
So was that's a lot. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I hope that made sense and wasn't too jumbled, but
no, it's just really interesting that because you mentioned this whenever we had that short text exchange, or no, maybe I watched a reel or something that you made on Instagram. I can't remember. But you said it was something about the loneliness that basically like brought you to the wall.
Yeah.
And I find that really interesting because it was making me think of like, the reality TV shows, like it's like almost like a psychological factor.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it sounded like there were some practical things that weren't maybe going to line up for you to finish completely anyways, but that, getting like you came to a wall. So, I mean, would you have even ever expected that to happen?
No, that was the last thing I thought would happen. I thought, okay, my leg could really be done. That could happen. My bibs were no longer comfortable, and let the reader understand. And my arms were tired and they were pretty sunburned. So they were like, you know how like at the end of the night, whenever your sunburn like fully starts setting in, it's like, okay, my arms are cooking. That was happening. So I feel like any of those things could have played a role in it. But I knew like I can pretty much work through most of the physical stuff. Man, I thought my mental game was dialed in too. And I thought, even if I don't see anybody the whole time, like that's perfectly okay. And turns out I was wrong.
So how long were you, do you think, without seeing a cyclist?
Well, there were different times when I would go maybe an hour or two without seeing another person, and then I might see them for 5 minutes and then not see them again for another hour or two. At the end though, we were probably 100 miles away, or maybe 90. We were in there, that vicinity somewhere. And I was riding with these 3 people, or really one, and these other 2 were like just right ahead of us. And I said, if we go 10 miles an hour for the rest of the time without stopping, we will come in 1 hour late past the finish. And her eyes were just like, what? Are you serious? I was like, yeah. So we got to go. She's like, okay, let's go. I was like, I'll pull the rest of the way. You just follow, like draft off me. And then 2 miles later, I'd already dropped her, and she's like, hey, just go. And I dropped those other people too. So I was out on my own again, probably from mile 80 to mile 56 or wherever I got to. And again, those are loose numbers because I was at a different aid station. They're like, yeah, you got 80 miles left. And then I get to the next one. It's like, yeah, there's 56 left. So yeah, those last several hours, I was alone again and doing some pretty dangerous stuff on the bike, actually, for not being able to see very well, it being so dark, me being so tired, crossing those creeks, almost getting hit by a deer. Like, it was just, it was, it was dangerous. But really, the loneliness was probably the most dangerous part for me. And I don't know what I mean by dangerous, but it was definitely the most painful.
When did you start to notice it, like, as actually being loneliness?
Probably when it got really flat. And okay, there's a part of the section where we were lined up with like the 200s, the 100s, and all the other different race lengths. And so we could ride with people for a little while and then pass them, or vice versa. But there was a part where, and I had this in the video, thank God, the road everybody's going left, and my map says go straight. And the road turns, but there's, it's like an intersection.
Was that the 200 versus the 350
or? Yep. And so the 200 is to go left, and there's a rider right there on the corner, just sitting there on his bicycle. Like, I don't know what he was doing exactly, but I was to go straight, and I caught this on video. And so it's just like everybody else is pointing left, I'm going straight back into isolation. And it was probably 95 degrees out there at that point. The sun was beating down, there were no clouds. It was flat, it was windy, and I had 130 or 40 miles left. And that's when I was like, okay, I might not see anybody again for the rest of this ride. And that was really lonely and tough. It almost felt like, did the organizers, are we just doing busy work at this point? Because you'd go forever straight, you turn left. You go forever, you turn right. Go forever, you turn left. It's like, what are we doing? Are we playing Pac-Man or something? I just wasn't thinking right. It was wild. It was really wild. And that's when the pain of the loneliness set in.
So do you think, that's such an interesting moment, like like that contrast. Would you want to try to do that race again, or would you want to try to do like stay with or be in like do it with people in a general sense?
Perfect world, next year I go back and I do the 50 or the 100, and my family goes with me, so that I get to still race, but I don't have to be gone the whole day. So I still get to hang out with my family, get to hang out with my friends, get to go to the expo, get to do all the fun things, get to be in community. That's what I really want. I don't want to. I did it, and I never want to experience that loneliness again. Worst thing ever.
Wow, those are big words. Worst thing ever.
Well, I don't consider myself like an introvert by any stretch of the imagination at all. I like where I work. I like my friends. The only thing I really do alone a lot is cycling, but that's because of the schedules. Like, I try to accommodate like what's best for my family today. Okay, sure. It's riding early in the morning, okay, or it's riding at lunchtime, or riding right after work. So I try to accommodate that. But I like to be around people, and to be forced into that level of sleep deprivation and physical exertion and away from people, when in my mind I knew it, like theoretically it could be possible, but in reality I didn't realize the impact of the community at Unbound last year. So I came away hyped of like my result, but I really think I came away hyped about like-minded friends all doing the same thing, pumping each other up, liking our stuff on Instagram and Facebook. And in the video I made, like I got a lot of love from that. That's what I liked. And it took me riding 300 miles to realize that I have no idea what is important to me.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably the nuts and bolts. That's probably the summary right there of what happened to me.
And it's interesting because when we talked last year, you did have like this. You had some like a similar physical experience on the bike where you were kind of down, and then all of a sudden you were like had this re-energizing thing, and but you were always like within the group somewhere. Or I remember you saying like in the last leg of the race, you could see like a group of people out in front of you, and you were kind of drafting off that, and and I think when we talked last year as well, there was one of your friends, like you got home and one of your friends was like, no one's going to really understand, because this thing that you did with these people in this community is very, niche. And so people aren't going to understand how meaningful it was to you when you go back, when you kind of like settle back into your normal life.
Yes, that did happen last year. That has not happened yet this year, and I don't think it will. And the reason is because I think my perspective changed so drastically. So last year I felt lonely because I was with all these people and hanging out and having a great time. And then I come back to my office in my home, and at that time, like my office people, like they knew what I did, they didn't care, and it's okay.
That's great, Bill. What was
Yeah.
that little thing you did this weekend? Oh, that's cool.
Yes. And I mean, just to be 100% transparent, like my wife and I weren't doing really well at that time either. Like we were coming back off of some rocky times, but she didn't support the race, and so it was like, hey, you're home, cool, no big deal. And um, so I felt lonely when I got home, and then this year was like the opposite. I was lonely there, and I came home to support.
Wow, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I said, I learned a lot about what my priorities are, and I talk about that in the video. Like there's multiple times throughout the, and it's crazy that the only person that I could talk to was my future YouTube watchers. I felt less lonely holding my camera out and being like, "Hey, I'm doing this, and I sucks, and I'm the worst cyclist in the world, but I'm gonna keep pedaling because this is what I wanted to do."
Mm.
And I just want to go home, and I want to tuck my daughter in, and I want to kiss her on the forehead, and I want to go hang out with my wife. Like those were the things I was saying, and obviously they're gonna be in the video. But I felt like people were with me when I'd hold that camera out, which is so weird.
That's what we're doing right now.
And the video this year is going to be like 35 minutes or 40. It's going to be way too long for the average person. But I'm making it for me.
Yep.
And I do hope that it does have like it resonates with people again. And I hope that I'm able to kind of portray like here's what I thought I was going to be again this year, and then here's the reality of what I need in life. And I think it's going to paint that picture really, really clearly. In fact, I hope you'll watch it before I release it and just kind of give me some feedback and make sure like nothing's crazy. But yeah.
That to me, like it sounds in our life, there are different things, there are different times where different things bring healing. And, you alluded to kind of struggling relationally in your life last year, and the bike, whether or not it was helping or hurting that, it was probably it was doing something for you, obviously, and during that season. And it sounds like this year, like just actually not like the bike is not helping you in a degree, it's a big part of your life, but that more healing is taking place, like more transformation, because you have like this, pushing coming up on 5 years ago of like this physical change, and then you find this new hobby that's not like guitar, like that is, and there's even community around that, like, and then, but we, as people probably like yourself or myself with addictive personalities, like you just go all in, like at the expense of things. And then you kind of have to, because it's like, we can drive a good thing into the dirt or whatever. And then we find a deeper healing and a deeper connection. And hopefully these things that you've gathered, like the cycling, like it gets put in a, not that you should be like, oh, this damn bike, it's doing, it's like, it gets put into more like a better place on your values, system.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like to me, dude. I'm happy to hear all that.
Yeah.
Honestly. And
yeah, kind of the image I have in my head when you say that is like it becomes a different tool in your toolbox.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, still necessary, but it just has a different function and essential.
And good.
But, yeah.
And it's a good tool. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Or I think so.
So, yeah, I had the question on here. What has this process taught you about yourself? So, we've kind of hit that pretty clearly. Which this is another piece of this. I'm curious for you because, like, I saw that you've had a couple, maybe 2 or 3 podcast conversations out, and when everybody's got a podcast and everyone's was like, why are we doing this? I want to know from you. I have my own ideas, but like, why are we doing that? And I think it connects to what we've been talking about.
So are we doing podcasts in general, or like, why am I doing when I'm cycling?
Both.
Okay. So I live in a unique spot where I'm kind of like 30 minutes or an hour from different people that I ride with. And I live next door to a guy. Like, he lives in like 15 minutes away in a different town, but it feels next door. And he's the CEO of Craighead Electric. And just a big company. He's a year older than me. Obviously, he's had a different life path than me to have that much success at a young age. But he's an amazing cyclist, and we have a project that we're going to be working on together. And then I'm also excited that my buddy Nolan is going to be doing his first Century ride. We're co-workers. He's a student. He's going to be a senior this year. I just officiated him and his wife's wedding, and just a great guy. And I just thought, here's all these different people who don't know each other, and nobody's really introduced them to each other. Or once they do introduce them, all of a sudden they become best friends. And so I thought, why not try to be the launching pad in a podcast of getting these people on the phone where they can meet each other, get to know each other, and find new riding buddies. So, because you honestly don't know. Like, I told Jeremiah, the guy who's works at Craig Electric, I told him things on our first bike ride together that was like 2 or 3 hours long that I just would not tell anybody else, like just in a coffee shop first hangout session. And it's because, we're going through the trenches together, so to speak. And cyclists often don't know who are the other soldiers out there. So that's where I wanted to kind of fill that void. And it might only last, 1 year, might even last just a few months, but so far it's been pretty successful, and it seems to resonate with those who are listening.
I think that is, you hit on it, like a conversation that you can hit the ground running at 60 miles an hour, or hit the ground riding at 60 miles an hour. That's been my experience with getting into this space. Was there were people that were having conversations about certain things, about culture and about faith and about meaning, really, that had been like, they've been cycling alone. Like I'd been cycling alone with a lot of this information for like 6-7 years in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, oh, there are other people out here that are talking very specifically about these things. And so I think that's a big part of the future of podcasts. No one's going to be Joe Rogan again. That's just that time is over, as far as like,
yep.
But, and the barrier to entry is so much lower even now. And so, but there can still be a lot of meaning made through the network. Like I have like a network as my background, you know, because it's like you're trying to foster that network of relationship, not just of like not only the cycling, but it's like that's like a center point, but it's about the relationality around it. And I think that that's something that we've been hitting on in this conversation. And you know, and we live in an interesting time where that can happen. Like you're saying, like, well, these people live an hour away, or you know, you and I, we live about an hour and 15 minutes away. And yet here we can get on and we can talk about this thing in your life that I recognize has carried so much deep meaning, you know, and it's cool to be able to follow up on the story from last year to this year and hear how that has like evolved and transitioned. So, I mean, I'm just agreeing with you and giving you a little bit of my perspective on the old podcast thing. So, I don't know, did that spark anything with you, or I have some other thoughts I want to.
No, definitely. I think you're right on the money with all that. So
what do you think's unique about cycling?
You got the runner's high. I've never experienced that, but I've heard about it. The one time I did run this year was like I joked it was like my first and last run. The dopamine hit of like doing a hard effort came so much faster than riding. And I know that over time it would be harder to you have to run further to get the same like level of feeling and like like it just, you know, in a release. So cycling does that for me. The problem is I have to ride further and further and further and harder and harder and harder to get that same high. So that's like the physical reward of it. It cleanses. You especially if you're riding in the heat, you get really hot, and it's really nice to just to get done with the ride and feel cleansed. Or if I'm stressed, you can ride really hard and come home and just feel like, okay, past doesn't matter, future doesn't matter. All that matters is present. Like when you can get to that point physically, like in a ride, and it might take an hour or two. But when you're in that phase where you're only concerned about what is right in front of you in the present, decisions about finances, decisions about life choices, decisions about like what should we do this week with my family, it just really becomes clear, or at least clear to me. And that might not be true for everybody, but for me, it's a way to just center everything and bring things back to levels of priority, so to speak.
Like the embodied practice, it like gets you into your mind and your body together through that motion.
Yep.
I had an interesting experience similar to that last. So I'm working about 2.5 hours away from home right now, and so I have a little longer commute. And you know, a lot of my commutes, because I worked in Jonesboro. You know, I worked for 3 years there. I worked in Little Rock for 2.5 years. So I've had these long commutes. A lot of that is spent listening to, we're spent listening to like YouTubes and podcasts and all that kind of stuff, and not a lot of music. And there's been other reasons for that. That there was a part of me that kind of had to heal. I didn't listen to music for a while because I was so sad about music, you know, in my life. But so I'm driving home last night, and I did this the last time on my drive home is I rolled down all the windows and I turned up the music as loud as I could. And I was singing. And as I was doing that, I actually had ideas.
Yeah.
Like it brought me into a space to where because I've kind of been on this block with like, I haven't made a lot of videos lately creatively. I've just been having conversations, which has been a lot of fun, but I was kind of feeling this desire, and it kind of like, it pulled some things together for me in that process of like the wind and like breathing and singing. And it was just really invigorating, I guess, or exciting or whatever. It was cool. Yeah. So that's how that kind of, I hear that. And I think there's a lot of,
hey, songs do that for me sometimes too.
Mm.
Like if I'm driving to work or it's the weekend and the right song comes on the radio just randomly, uh, I'm with you, man. Like I totally, there is something very similar to what I just explained about the bicycle to what you're talking about, at least for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So do I thought we didn't really highlight this, but you said your vision for next year to be involved in Unbound was to bring the family along and
Mm-hmm.
put less pressure on the ride and lean more into the experience.
Yep.
And is there something too that you feel like I mean, especially with this last experience that you've pushed yourself maybe as far as you can push yourself to a degree? Do you feel like that's kind of like what brought you to that place?
That's a really good question, and I don't think so. And I think that if I were to go to do the 350 again next year, I could train a little bit differently and be just fine, assuming that my bike holds up. But I could get away with a whole lot less stuff than I took with me. I could take a lot of weight off my back. Um, I mean, the conditions this year were almost perfect.
Mhm.
So it was the year to get the whole thing done, and I didn't do it. And I think I know what was wrong. So I think I could fix it. But I don't have a desire to do that. So and honestly, that could change. You
Yeah.
know, in a week from now, that could completely change. But right now, I'm just loving being home with my family, and I want them to come and experience a taste of it, even if that means I need to ride the 25 mile next year and just ride for those 2 hours and hang out and whatnot. Jeremy Sullivan, he rode the 50 mile with his son Jack, who's 12.
Hmm.
Dude, one of the best things that happened to me on that ride was beforehand getting to hang out with Jeremy and Jack, and then afterwards getting to hang out with him again. And like, they came and helped me like get my bike cleaned up and find my car, which it's amazing how hard it is to find your own car after a race like that. I was looking on the entire wrong side of the street, like
You weren't delirious or
I
anything,
was
and
6 blocks away from it. Look, like it should be right here. I bet it got towed, you know. But yeah, it's just seeing the young man Jack as like the enthusiasm and the excitement. I loved that. And
hmm.
so, come next year, I need to remember all this. So, like, because
Yeah,
I don't
I
want to
could
sign up
see
for the big
how.
one
Yeah,
again.
I could see how some of those things would want to. You're like, oh, you kind of get back into this like, I want to perform this year. I want to perform this year, or execute where, um, but like zooming out and being like, likely there's going to be another year, and maybe this year's the year that your daughter's still young, and um, taking Taylor out there and letting him bringing them into that part of your life.
Yep.
Um, that sounds cool. And I don't know. You've had it. When I think about, you went out there with like one guy locally last year,
Last year.
one guy from this area, and how many people from this area went out there this year?
Oh, there were probably 10 that I know of.
I think you had something to do with that.
Maybe,
Well,
maybe. Um, yeah, a couple of the guys who were gonna go, they might have went because of me. Um, but I do think that I was able to describe it in such a way that was like a man, I got to do this next year.
that, and you're doing the social media thing, and you've made videos on YouTube, and they're like, oh, this, and they're like, well, and I know Bill, like, and and I think that how we are when we like, you get on and you start watching these videos, like, oh, I'm gonna go watch that again because that's getting me popped up, and it's like there's a personal connection with this person. I think that I probably did have something to do with it, even if it's subconscious. Um, I don't. That's my thought on that stuff, anyways. But uh, so I was curious on this but you already kind of answered this. Are you still plant strong? You still
Big
consider,
time.
what are the details of your diet these days?
No meat, no dairy, no salt, no oil. That's still like the essential foundation. But I've been trying to like I get these meals called Leaf Side, and it's like all these whatever ingredients from recommended by Dr. Greger, who's like the leading expert in the plant based stuff. But I will I'll cook that meal in boiling water along with like a half a thing of like whole grain spaghetti noodles and a bunch of spinach and some extra broccoli. And I'll make it, instead of one meal, it'll become like 3 meals. So that's kind of been my lunch or dinner most days. And then, I mean, I'm so big into oatmeal. Like every single morning, it's always my snack, bananas, those kinds of things. But yeah, I'm still pretty strict. So
And we're back. Had a little
hey,
connection issue. So yeah, man. I don't know. I guess you were wanting to pick. You said you maybe had some questions about podcasting, like what I've been doing podcast, or I don't know. Did you have any questions about all this stuff? Because I kind of like sent you a link a few weeks ago, and you were like, "What is this?"
yeah, I was like, okay, how does he have like tenfold more subscribers than me and all these other things? So like, it just seems like you and I don't talk about this topic very much of what you're doing, and so it's just weird that like, okay, Christian seems to be the expert on YouTube on all this now and bringing all these people together. All of
I'm
a sudden,
actually I'm actually the small in this little, we call it this little corner of the internet.
mm-hmm,
And it's kind of centered around relationally around this guy. He's a pastor out in Sacramento at a really small church. It's like a Reformed Christian church. His name's Paul Vanderklay. And like 7 years ago, he started making videos about Jordan Peterson, just like, this guy's interesting. He's doing interesting things in the culture. People that have not listened to the Bible are like listening to him lecture about Genesis for like 2.5 hours. This is kind of interesting.
mm-hmm,
And he's got like 30,000 subs now. It's been kind of like, but some of the growth happened pretty quick for him. But then there's a couple of other people. There's a guy named Jonathan Pinchot, who's like a Greek Orthodox carver, but he's been talking about ideas about reality, about meaning and related to God. And then there's this other cognitive science guy named John Vervaeke. And so there's kind of like these players, and people have consumed a lot of their content, like hundreds of hours.
mm-hmm.
And kind of like what I was saying, like having that conversation, like hundreds of hours of this content and no one to talk to about it. Hundreds of miles on the road cycling, but no one to talk about, like
Yeah,
really talk about the finer things. And so when I saw that people kind of were, I was like, oh, I want to connect to this space. Because Paul was having a live stream and there were like 10 people on the screen just talking about this stuff. And he just let them in. He put a link, like the StreamYard link I sent you. He put one of in the premiere chat, the live chat, and people just popped up. He just let them in. And then I realized there were other people talking about it. So I made a video and I was just like, hey, this stuff's been meaningful to me. And there was this guy named Chad who was doing podcasts, and he's this interesting character. He wears a wrestling mask, like on that's all.
like a luchador.
Yeah, like he wears it on all of his stuff.
Wow,
And but
reminds me of like Rey Mysterio from '90s
yes,
wrestling.
and then there's this guy named Grim who has a show. It's called his Grim Grizz, his Broken Clock Tower, and he's got like 1,000 subs. Chad's got like 650, but Grim's show is Grim used to be like a full-on truther, like, but now he's kind of more of like trying to just get people to like create community, which is something that we were talking about, people that
Mm-hmm.
feel alone. And why I wanted to hit on that in this podcast, because I think it's more, I mean, you came to that space like in a physical sense, but I think a lot of people are dealing with loneliness in our culture, partially because of these screens.
Yeah.
And so he's kind of trying to like go back into, he calls it the God set, like TV set, and the God cell, like cell phone. And like going in through these things. But anyways, and he's an interesting dude.
Have you seen the astronaut movie with Adam Sandler on Netflix?
No, I haven't.
Okay, you and Megan got to watch it. Megan's
Okay.
gonna love it. You're gonna love it too, but Megan's really gonna love it. This spider alien has this deep emotional knowledge and is able to discover things and find things out. And one of the things that came into my head during the race was something that Spider said to Adam Sandler, because he's alone, flying, to the outer edge of the world by himself, or out of the universe by himself, and there's only this spider to talk to. And the spider says, I can see I can feel your pain, and maybe it's your boundaries with other people that make you so lonely. Like you're doing this to yourself.
Yep.
And that resonated, like when I thought about that on the ride. But then I think that's like back at home too, though. Like people who are so afraid of being hurt by others and put all these boundaries up to prevent from being hurt, in return become lonely and become experience the one thing they're trying to avoid.
What do you think? Why do you think we're culturally putting up those boundaries?
I don't know. Maybe we just don't like it when people disagree with us, or like they remind us of like feeling punished the way our parents made us feel punished. That could be part of it. Everybody seems a little sensitive about, any kind of correction or discipline. And for right or wrong, that once you have the money and the resources to put up your four walls and live inside your home and keep the rest of the world out, it seems like that's what people opt in to do. And in return,
it's easier to, to scroll.
Yeah.
And to type. Honestly, that's one of the interesting things about like getting on and doing podcasts and conversation versus typing comments or tweets or even pictures is it's much more closer to the embodied connection, even though it's still got its limits. But
have you seen that meme about Jesus? His real miracle was that he was 33 years old and still had 12 friends.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's really, like, it's right. Like, yeah, we keep people at arm's length. And
I think there have been cultural forces have made people feel like, they couldn't be honest, or, without risking shame or quote unquote a type of cancellation.
Yeah.
And I think that as a result, we kind of did go part that we also went into ourselves then because we were all watching this stuff by ourselves, but then on our phones. And then it's like, but how do you talk about this? I think that's part of it.
I made a joke in my video and I'm going to keep it, but I'm afraid it's going to get me canceled. So, and it's
preview. Everybody go watch Bill's video when it comes out.
It's ridiculous. I even have to think about that. And here's the thing. It's like, I can't go around telling people like, well, actually I have more family members with diabetes than you do. So I can make a diabetes joke if I want to. But it's just weird. That's like, is that going to be the hang up, for some people to just turn the video off or to start hating on the comments?
Yeah, it's it's difficult to choose to be okay with being yourself. I think we're having to relearn that, and we went through some really intense things culturally. A lot of different perspectives came on, and it's like, oh well, I don't know anything, and as a result, I don't have a voice or something. So, I just would contend like the conversations that I've been involved in this space, and is some of it. It's not always the case, and we are in an election year, so
yeah. It doesn't feel like it though. What in the world is going on?
And as a result, trying to I want to transcend that. I feel like it's so hard, like that's the highest level is if we have to talk about politics, and then it's like, well, then everything just falls off every time. I was like, I just want to get past that.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really bring, like, ultimately, if that's the highest level, it just makes you angry or mad or depressed or something. So that's been a little bit about this space as well. There was one thing you mentioned way back in the conversation about getting on the bike and having that conversation with your friend who lives in town, that works at the electric company.
Yeah, Jeremiah.
Yeah, you said that, like, the hitting the ground running, and it's because partially I believe that cycling space is sacred. Like
Makes sense.
it creates a sacred moment and unity and experience, um, and you're out in nature um, and because maybe the hobby is niche, it's like, well, I know that this, like if I'm bringing this here into this space, it's not like something that I'm bringing into all these other spaces, um, which creates a type of a sacred, special place for that. I don't know, Bill. I in my intro, I was like, "You're gonna love his impeccable sense of humor," and you have been like so stoic.
Well, I'm still coming off, I'm working on
Yeah,
my
it's
video
true. It's
every
heavy.
morning and every
Uh,
night, and it puts me back into like it's equivalent to
mm,
listening to Damien Rice. Like it's just depression. And but I like it. Um, in fact, the whole I think your wife's the one who first said this, the difference between being vulnerable and being intimate. Vulnerability means you've processed it. It doesn't matter how people respond. Being intimate, you actually do care how people respond,
mhm.
and you need to keep that like in safe spaces. What I'm going to put out there is going to feel very intimate. And so I really hope that the comments on YouTube are nice, at least for the first few weeks until I'm able to like come down and settle in on how I actually feel about everything.
Or maybe through this process, through some other processes, maybe
Yeah.
there will be some processing
Yeah.
that will allow for some more healing related to that to take place. But I mean, but there is also this balance of wanting to try to get something true and raw captured because and to share that part of yourself because that's what the experience was,
Mm-hmm.
so I could see how that is a balance. I think actually she would credit that to Brene Brown.
She did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I just heard it first from Megan.
Yeah, she
So
is a
Megan
wise.
and Brene Brown are on the same level forever in my mind.
Yeah, I feel that way. I think Megan's a little higher on
Oh
that.
yeah. Oh
I have to say
definitely.
that, but she is yeah, man, she's
Yeah.
amazing.
Your
Um,
wife really has a really good way with words, and is just a really incredibly thoughtful person. And yeah, I really love Megan. So yeah.
we've been through it. We've gone. Megan was as we talked about Bill and I being in a band together. Megan was a big part of that, singing
Mm-hmm.
a lot with us, and so yeah, he's been. One day, Megan and I didn't hear our own kid crying, and Bill was asleep at our house, and you went and picked up Liv out of the crib.
Her leg was stuck in the
Ah,
thing.
Bill, we're gonna get turned into.
I mean, it was stuck in. She was holding it with her hands. So
Yeah, she was all yeah. Yeah,
just
dude.
delete it. It was fun. It was
No, man.
really great.
For the those listening, do you have any good Christian Baxter band memories you want to bring out to the from
Oh
our
man.
band days?
That feels like such a lifetime ago.
Does. It's
Yeah,
good though.
it is really good. No, yeah. Over time you kind of forget about like the random mishaps and the feelings and the relationships that you've hurt, and you only remember the good things and see how
Mm,
like things have progressed and gotten better. And so I think that's where I am. Like, 100% of me is so grateful and thankful for what we did and the time that we got to spend together, and no regrets at this point.
yeah.
Um, like all the I wish I would have treated Charles Stover a little different at times and like more graceful and kind. But we were just at different phases in life. He was a little bit ahead of me with his fiance and then his wife, and I was a little bit ahead of him on in terms of like how to conduct yourself professionally in a band. And it's just when you're young, you're stupid, and that I was young and stupid, and I wish I could have done some things differently, but I've made a lot bigger mistakes than I did with my friendship with Charles during those times, and we're great now. Like it's no big deal now. So yeah, no regrets. Just really grateful that we had those years. Like was it 6 or 7 years together?
Yeah. It was I mean, 2005-ish probably to
20,
13,
2012. Yeah, 20. Yeah.
12, 13, somewhere around there.
Yep.
So yeah, it was good times. That Charles has been posting. He's been doing his own little social media project with the Heidelberg Catechism over on
Yeah.
Facebook. been seeing those. He's been doing that as kind of discipline. Seems like he's kind of doing some good stuff right now. Anyways, dude. Well, man, unless you got anything else, we can kind of like roll this thing out.
Probably need to get back to work anyway. So.
Oh yeah, are you doing the lunch break podcast?
Yep.
The lunch break podcast. All right, man. Well, I'm glad we made this happen, and hopefully it's good for your community over on Plant Strong Cycling, YouTube, Instagram. Check Bill out, and
thanks, man.
Yeah, and if you're looking for resources on lifestyle change, reach out to him. He can go much more in depth than he did on this about how that's been a part of his life. So,
yep.
Man,
hey,
thanks, Bill.
If anybody's still listening, this video is going to have something for everybody in it. So even if you don't even care about cycling, this next video when it comes out,
when are you hoping to finish?
The next day or two.
Okay, and have it up next week.
Yep.
Right.
And I think that if I can accomplish anything, it's going to be that we all want to be better dads or parents. So,
all right.
So yeah, I think it's gonna have something for everybody in it.
You can find it on this link. I'm gonna do one of those things wherever it is. It's gonna be somewhere. It's gonna get pinned. So,
all right, man. That little number did it.
All right, Bill. We'll end this thing back. We'll end this thing backstage.
All right, thanks, man.
Hey guys. Thanks so much for tuning in and staying with us until the end of today's episode. Your support and digital connection is deeply meaningful to me. If you've enjoyed our conversation and believe that these conversations bring real value to your life and in this space, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. By doing so, you'll be helping me reach the goal of starting channel memberships, where we can continue building a TLC, this little corner of the internet sub-community. My hope is to be able to further cultivate digital community on this channel, to be a space where kindred souls can engage in deeper, more intimate discussions from various corners of the corner. Thank you again for being a part of this journey.